How does the water quality of the Narellan Creek impact the biodiversity of the region, specifically in relation to bird species? There is currently great importance placed on preserving the biodiversity of our ecosystems at this point in time due to extensive species loss across the globe. This is due to all species playing an essential role in how the ecosystem functions and survives. Therefore, with the loss of one species, has the potential to create a domino effect for others. Water is one of the most important resources in the world and provides animals with a range of needs and requirements, such as food and a water source, habitat, shelter, breeding grounds, travel, and houses other species that they interrelate with. This therefore makes regular water testing imperative as it has the ability to impact all species in a range of ways. Aquatic birds are one of the groups of species that can be impacted highly by the water quality of the water bodies they reside near. More research needs to be conducted on the water parameters each of those species are able to withstand in order to reproduce and survive. I have chosen this area of study due to there being an apparent lack of aquatic species residing in the Macarthur region and very little information on it. The results of this study will then be compared to the Hawkesbury River and Nepean River, due to the Narellan Creek being a part of the upper catchment of the Hawkesbury River and thus flows directly to it. The aim of this investigation is to determine whether the water quality of the Narellan Creek impacts the presence of aquatic bird species in the region, thus detrimentally affecting the overall biodiversity. The objectives of the study are to determine the water quality of the Narellan Creek, as well as then comparing this to the bird species observed in the area. Other objectives of the study included comparing the data found at the Narellan Creek to the Hawkesbury River and the Nepean River, as well as proposing strategies for improvement if needed. The steps of this study were as follows. First, the recent water quality published reports of all three creeks were researched due to COVID making physical tests impossible at the given time. Then I completed 10 physical observations at the nominated site of each bird species that were present, with each observation period lasting 15 minutes. The third step was to then research the parameters that each of the bird species observed could withstand in order to make connections between the birds viewed and the water quality reports published. After this, the data would be analysed in the form of tables and graphs in order to show trends. Lastly, the data will be presented in a report where the results will be then discussed. These are the photos of the observation site that were utilised in this study. As you can see, there are tall trees that are lining one side of the river. There are long reeds on both sides of the river, nearly covering the entire bank. The water is also quite murky and appears to be a green or brown colour. Sydney Water's quarterly water report was utilised as the main source for the recent test results for the three rivers used in this study. In terms of Narellan Creek, this creek is a part of the Macarthur region, and the results documented by Sydney Water are as follows. The average pH was 6.9, the average turbidity was 2.13 NTU. The E. coli was recorded as 3 organisms per 100 mils, as well as the average manganese being 0.043 milligrams per litre. These results were similar to those published in the previous quarter reports, with only slight variances. These results were within the range recommended and thus would be classified as clean and healthy. In March 2020, however, Sydney Water announced that water conservation was a must in the Macarthur region due to a recent series of storms, possibly increasing the turbidity and debris in the water bodies of the surrounding areas. In terms of the other bodies of water, the Sydney Water Quarterly Report was also utilised. The average pH of the Hawkesbury River was 7.0 and the turbidity was 10.59 NTU. The E. coli was measured at 281 organisms per 100 ml and the average manganese was 0.160 milligrams per litre. These parameters significantly decreased from the previous quarterly report and are still considerably higher than those measured at the Narellan Creek. The Nepean River's average pH was 7.1 and the turbidity was 5.38 NTU. The E. coli was less than 1 organisms per 100 ml and the average manganese was 0.126 milligrams per litre. For this report, the turbidity and manganese increased compared to the previous report. However, the other two parameters remain fairly constant. These parameters, excluding the E. coli, were still considerably higher than the results of the Narellan Creek. In terms of the data analysis in this study, I was able to create two graphs to visually represent the trends present in the observations. The first figure shows the total number of each species observations across all 10. The species that was observed the most was the house sparrow, with the species that was observed the least, the magpie and the crow. In figure 2, this shows that there were only 6 different species of the birds observed, with only one of the species being aquatic and the rest being terrestrial. Across the 10 observations, there was only one aquatic bird species that was seen at the site, as the other 5 species observed were terrestrial. This therefore creates a question as to why there were so few aquatic species viewed, and thus complements the query that there appears to be a lack of these species in the Macarthur region. As the site was located next to a road, it is possible that this has impacted the species that occupy the creek in this spot due to being intimidated by the traffic. The cattle and horses in this area also have the possibility to impact the species present in the region, as well as their feces possibly contaminating the water or surrounding bank. As there is very little research available on the water parameters and conditions that Australian bird species are able to handle, this created difficulty in the study in terms of connecting this to the results of the quarterly report. Therefore, more importance needs to be placed on this topic in order to increase our understanding of the impacts of water in the environment on birds. In conclusion, the water quality of the Narellan Creek was documented to be in good condition and within the healthy ranges. When compared to the other bodies of water, it seemed that the Narellan Creek was in overall better condition than the Hawkesbury River and Nepean River. It is possible that the surrounding environment and cattle that roam the region where the observation site is had a significant impact on the birds that occupy the area. As the creek is in good condition, it was determined that currently no improvements need to be made in terms of the water quality, and thus may instead require distancing the cattle or looking for other options if possible. This study, however, could be improved from having multiple observation sites to compare along the Narellan Creek, as well as completing current water testing.